Welcome to episode 2 of The Six Shifts with Katie Egan-Cunningham, Jan Berkins, and Carrie Yates, co-authors of Shifting the Balance, 6 Ways to Bring the Science of Reading into the Upper Elementary Classroom, published by Stenhouse. In this series, Katie, Jan, and Carrie, along with The Six Shifts' Maggie Thorson, address 6 more evidence-based shifts that teachers can make to bring the science of reading into the upper elementary classroom. In our previous episode, they shared the story behind this second Shifting the Balance book and their experience rethinking literacy instruction for developing readers. In this episode, they dig into the first new shift, reconsidering how knowledge impacts comprehension.
Welcome back. Today, we're excited to dive into Shift 1 of the new Shifting the Balance book with authors Katie and Jan and Carrie. So to start us out today, ladies, I'm noticing how at first glance, this new book seems so similar to the K2 book, both in appearance and in structure. Can you start us off by talking a bit today about how these two books are the same and how they're different?
Thanks, Maggie. It's with a lot of intentionality. So the shifts in this new book are organized around the same structure as the first, but with 6 new shifts. So we begin every chapter with a look inside a classroom. We name some widespread misunderstandings that may be driving some of our current classroom practices. And then in the second half of each chapter, we zoom in on high leverage routines that teachers can put into practice in their classrooms right away. We know that's really important to teachers. Then we revisit the opening classroom scenario, and we paint a picture of how the teacher has started to make some shifts to their practices and how children are responding. And finally, just like in the first book, we end with some questions to help teachers reflect on practices in light of what we've revealed about the topic that's driving the shift.
Yes. And although the structure in this book is very much the same as the structure in the first book, even down to the interior design and the way colors help you find your way around, there are 6 new shifts for teachers to consider. We chose these shifts because they're especially important for upper elementary years when most children are making progress as readers, but where we still have children that do need support with things like word recognition and language comprehension and vocabulary development and fluency.
Yeah, so I can see how that familiar structure, for those of us who have read the K2 book, it will really pull us in and help us dig into these new shifts. So let's do just that. Let's dig in. Let's hear a little bit about this first shift called Reconsidering How Knowledge Impacts Reading Comprehension. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of knowledge building and its role in reading comprehension?
Yeah. First of all, we were really intentional about starting the book with comprehension once again, because we know that ultimately meaning making is what all of our efforts in the reading classroom are about. And we also had on our minds this kind of national conversation about reading methods and this very valid concern in the field that we might be prone to overcorrection and ending up with lots of students who can decode words, but who still really struggle when it comes to comprehension.
We're already starting to see this overcorrection in some places around the world. So starting with meaning remained really essential for us. Because while decoding is a prerequisite for gathering meaning, without comprehension, decoding skills are of little use. And as we know from some of the reading models that we share in the book, both language comprehension and word recognition are essential to reading comprehension. So the reading comprehension conversation in this new book is really an extension of the language comprehension conversation that Jan and Carrie began in the first book.
As we move into this shift even further, that first chapter is really about how important knowledge is when it comes to that reading comprehension. So, what were some of the common assumptions about knowledge that maybe didn't hold up in light of the reading research?
Well, Maggie, the first misunderstanding that really impacted our thinking was misunderstanding number one. It's actually the first misunderstanding in the book. And the idea that we don't really need to have a lot of knowledge because we live in this age where we can Google anything we need to know. And it's true. We do live in an information age, and most of us do carry around, I would bet all of us now just about carry around portable computers in our pockets, and we interact with them all day long. So the assumption has been that we should primarily teach students reading strategies that show them how to learn information or find information rather than teach them specific content or build knowledge. But when we dove into the research, especially from cognitive science, it showed us that background knowledge, knowing stuff about stuff, is absolutely indispensable for reading comprehension, even in this age of technology.
Mm-hmm. And a second misunderstanding that we thought really deserves some attention is this idea that science and social studies instruction is less important than reading instruction, particularly for students who are having difficulty with reading. And maybe it seems logical that if kids can't read well, they won't be able to learn much content. But the truth is that without some background knowledge in the content areas, their comprehension is at risk. And unfortunately, the common scenario of reading instruction gets the lion's share of instructional minutes to the neglect of helping children acquire knowledge, or as Jan said, learn stuff about stuff, has actually set students up for reading comprehension in complex text to be even more difficult.
Thank you. That's very insightful. Those misunderstandings are such an intriguing part of the structure of this book. As we wrap up that first shift, what's the essence of this chapter 1? What can readers really expect to glean from shift 1?
In Shift 1, we explore 4 misunderstandings that are all related to reading comprehension and knowledge building. And we gently challenge educators to reconsider some common practices that might be getting in the way of building knowledge as this essential component of comprehension.
And we spend the second half of the chapter describing some specific instructional routines that can help teachers engage in intentional knowledge building so their students will be better positioned to comprehend those complex texts that are just so important. And because in this chapter, and actually in every chapter, there was more than what we could share or fit into the pages of the book, we've housed some additional free resources at the6shifts.com. So we really encourage teachers to check those out.
Mm-hmm. Free goodies. You can get them there.
Shifting the Balance: 6 Ways to Bring the Science of Reading into the Upper Elementary Classroom by Katie Egan Cunningham, Jan Berkins, and Carrie Yates is available from Stenhouse Publishers. You can learn more about these 6 new shifts, the 6 shifts from the first book, and the companion online classes for both books at www.the6shifts.com. We hope you enjoyed listening to The 6 Shifts with Katie Egan Cunningham, Jan Berkins, and Carrie Yates. In our next episode, we'll talk about Shift 2 in the book, which is all about teaching reading strategies. If you've been wondering what your strategy instruction should look like in light of reading science, then this upcoming episode will be of interest. We'd love to hear your feedback. Get in touch with us at marketing@stenhouse.com, and please share this with your colleagues who you think would enjoy listening too. Thanks for listening.